I stood alone in the parking lot of Grace Memorial Chapel, adjusting the collar of my dark suit. My wife Margaret lay inside, waiting for her final goodbye. My daughter-in-law Clarissa arrived with my son Marcus, her eyes scanning me with disgust. She stopped 3 feet away, loud enough for arriving mourners to hear. "You look like trash. Could you not embarrass us today?" Her laugh cut through the morning air. Others joined nervously. Marcus looked away, silent. I said nothing, just straightened my tie. The suit cost $90,000. She had no idea who I was. I walked into the chapel slowly, my shoes clicking against the polished marble floor. The scent of lilies filled the air, mixed with the faint smell of old wood and candle wax. Margaret's casket sat at the front, covered in white roses, her favorite. 200 guests were settling into the pews, their voices creating a low murmur of sympathy and small talk. Clarissa's voice rang out again, sharp and commanding. "Not the family section. You can sit in the back with the others." She gestured toward the rear pews, with a dismissive wave, her diamond bracelet catching the light. I nodded once and moved to the back row, feeling eyes following me. Whispers rippled through the crowd. I sat down, folding my hands in my lap, and looked at Margaret's photo displayed on an easel near the casket. Her gentle smile looked back at me, the same smile I had woken up to for 43 years. As I sat there, I noticed several men in expensive suits scattered throughout the chapel. They were not people I recognized from our usual social circle. They sat quietly, professionally, their posture alert. One caught my eye and gave a slight nod. I returned it. The service began with soft music, a piano playing Margaret's favorite hymn. The pastor spoke about her kindness, her generosity, her quiet strength. People nodded. Some dabbed at their eyes with tissues. Then Clarissa stood up to speak. She walked to the podium with dramatic flair, her black dress clearly designer, her makeup perfect despite the supposed grief. She cleared her throat and began. "Margaret was such a special woman," she said, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "She faced so many challenges in her life. Financial struggles, the embarrassment of a husband who never quite made anything of himself. I felt my jaw tighten, but I remained still. Margaret confided in me so many times," Clarissa continued, warming to her performance. "She told me she wished Demetrius had been more ambitious, more successful. She carried the burden of supporting this family for years, working tirelessly while he remained content with mediocrity." She paused for effect, letting her words sink in. I remember her telling me just last year how she wished she could afford nicer things, how she had to scrimp and save just to make ends meet. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some looked at me with pity, others whispered to their neighbors. Marcus squirmed in the front pew but said nothing to contradict her. Clarissa painted picture after picture of a struggling woman married to a failure, of her own supposed generosity in helping us financially, of Margaret's secret shame about our modest lifestyle. I listened to every word, my face expressionless. Some of Margaret's older friends looked confused. They knew better, but they remained silent, perhaps thinking it inappropriate to cause a scene at a funeral. After the service, a receiving line formed naturally near the exit. Clarissa positioned herself at the center, accepting condolences as if she were the widow. She touched arms, accepted hugs, nodded solemnly, as people offered their sympathies. When anyone approached me, she would intercept them, steering them away with practiced ease. "Poor Margaret had to work so hard," she told one couple. "She basically supported them both on her salary." To another group, she said, "I tried to help financially, but you know how pride can be." Each lie built on the last, creating a narrative of noble suffering and family sacrifice. One elderly woman, a friend of Margaret's from her book club, managed to slip past Clarissa's guard. She approached me with tears in her eyes and took my hand. "Margaret told me everything," she whispered. "I am so sorry for your loss." Before I could respond, Clarissa appeared at her elbow. "Mrs. Patterson, how wonderful of you to come," Clarissa said smoothly, gently pulling the woman away from me. "Let me walk you to your car. The parking lot is so confusing here." Mrs. Patterson looked back at me helplessly as Clarissa guided her away. Then everything changed. 3 men in impeccable suits approached. The lead man was tall, silver-haired, carrying a leather briefcase. "Mr. Demetrius," he said, extending his hand. "I am Douglas Sterling, from Sterling and Associates. These are my partners, Robert Chen and David Walsh." He paused, then corrected himself. "Apologies. Robert Harrison and David Walsh." Clarissa materialized instantly, her predatory instincts activated. "If you are bill collectors, he has nothing," she said sharply. "You will need to take that up with the estate, and I can assure you there is nothing to collect." Douglas Sterling did not even glance at her. His focus remained entirely on me. "Sir, we need to discuss the estate and your wife's will. The reading is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock at our offices downtown. This is not a matter that can wait." He handed me a thick leather folder, the kind that costs more than most people spend on furniture. Clarissa's eyes locked onto it like a hawk spotting prey. She stepped closer, craning her neck to see inside. "Estate?" Clarissa said, her voice suddenly an octave higher. "What estate? Marcus, did you know anything about an estate?" Marcus looked as confused as she pretended to be. I opened the folder. Inside were documents with official seals, property deeds, investment statements. The preliminary numbers were visible on the first page. I glanced at them, then closed the folder. "This is family business." Clarissa snapped at the attorneys, her false sweetness evaporating. "I am family, his son's wife. I have a right to know what this is about." Douglas Sterling finally looked at her, his expression professionally neutral but his eyes cold. "Mrs. Henderson, you are not named in the will. This matter concerns Mr. Demetrius exclusively. The estate and its distribution are his private affairs." The color drained from Clarissa's face, then returned in a hot flush. Her mouth opened and closed. For the first time since I had known her, she appeared genuinely speechless. "Tomorrow at 10, I said quietly. My first word since entering the chapel. "I will be there." "Very good, sir," Sterling said. "Again, our deepest condolences for your loss. Mrs. Margaret was a remarkable woman." The three attorneys nodded respectfully to me, then turned and walked away, their shoes clicking in unison against the marble floor. The moment they were gone, Clarissa's demeanor transformed completely. The vicious woman who had mocked me in the parking lot disappeared. In her place stood someone almost unrecognizable, all smiles and concern. "Demetrius," she said, her voice dripping with honey, "we should talk about these arrangements. You must be so overwhelmed with grief. Let me help you. That is what family does." She reached for my arm. I stepped back smoothly, keeping distance between us. "Tomorrow at 10, I repeated, then walked past her toward the parking lot. Behind me, I heard her whispered urgently to Marcus. "Find out what this is about. Now." The offices of Sterling and Associates occupied the entire 32nd floor of the Hartfield Tower downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, the morning sun glinting off glass and steel. I arrived 15 minutes early, as was my habit. The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes, stood immediately when she saw me. "Mr. Demetrius, please come this way," she said, her voice respectful. "They are ready for you." She led me down a hallway lined with original artwork and polished mahogany doors. We stopped at a conference room at the end of the hall. Inside, I found Clarissa and Marcus already seated at a massive table that could have accommodated 20 people. Clarissa wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost $5,000, her hair styled perfectly, her makeup impeccable. She had clearly spent the evening shopping and preparing for this meeting. Marcus looked tired, his tie slightly crooked, dark circles under his eyes. "Good morning, Demetrius," Clarissa said brightly, gesturing to an empty chair. "We came early to make sure everything was ready for you." Her smile was so wide it looked painful. Marcus gave me a weak nod, but said nothing. Douglas Sterling entered with two other senior partners and a younger associate carrying files. They arranged themselves professionally along one side of the table. Sterling opened a burgundy leather portfolio and withdrew several documents. "Thank you all for coming," Sterling began. "We are here for the formal reading of the last will and testament of Margaret Catherine Whitmore Demetrius." Clarissa's eyes widened slightly at the hyphenated name, but she quickly recovered. "Whitmore?" she said. I did not realize Margaret had kept her maiden name professionally. Sterling continued without acknowledging her interruption. Mrs. Margaret's estate is substantial and has been carefully organized according to her explicit instructions. I will begin with the primary assets. He read through the list methodically. The primary residence, an 8,000 square foot home in Oakmont Hills, valued at $4.2 million. A vacation property in Aspen, Colorado, valued at $2.8 million. Investment portfolios managed by 3 separate firms, totaling approximately $3.7 million. Life insurance policies with a combined benefit of $5 million. Various business interests and holdings to be detailed separately. The room had gone completely silent except for Sterling's voice. Clarissa sat frozen, her mouth slightly open. Marcus stared at the table, processing the information. I sat quietly, my hands folded. The preliminary total of the known estate, Sterling concluded, is approximately $15.7 million. All assets, properties, and holdings are bequeathed solely and entirely to Mr. Nine. Demetrius, with the exception of a trust fund previously established for Marcus Henderson in the amount of $500,000, which has been active since his 21st birthday. This is impossible. Clarissa finally found her voice. Where did this money come from? Margaret was a secretary. I have seen her pay stubs. Sterling looked at her for the first time with something approaching interest. Mrs. Margaret was never a secretary. She managed her family wealth through various trusts and foundations. The Whitmore family fortune derives from Whitmore Industries, a textile manufacturing company founded in 1923 by her grandfather, Thomas Whitmore Sr. The company was sold in 1998 for $250 million. Mrs. Margaret received trust distributions for over 40 years. Clarissa's hands gripped the edge of the table, but they lived like they had nothing. Their car was 15 years old. Their clothes came from department stores. They never traveled, never spent money. Why would someone with millions live like that? That was their choice, Sterling said simply. And now we come to the second matter. He withdrew another folder, this one thicker. Mrs. Margaret also left detailed documentation regarding concerns she had about certain individuals. She hired a private investigation firm 2 years ago to monitor activities she found suspicious. He slid the folder across the table to Marcus. Your mother wanted you to have this. Marcus opened it with trembling hands. Inside were printed reports, photographs, bank statements, text message transcripts. His face went white as he read. Clarissa, he whispered. What is this? Clarissa lunged for the folder, but Sterling was faster, pulling it back. The contents include a complete background check on Mrs. Clarissa Henderson, born Clarissa Ann Morrison in Cleveland, Ohio. Married 3 times prior to her marriage to Marcus. First marriage ended in divorce after 8 months, when her husband discovered she had emptied his savings account. Second marriage to a man named Richard Pemberton, who was undergoing treatment for colon cancer. She divorced him 6 weeks before his death, and contested his will, attempting to claim his estate despite a prenuptial agreement. Clarissa stood up abruptly. This is slander. These are lies fabricated by a bitter old woman who never liked me. Sterling continued calmly. Third marriage to Gerald Foster was annulled after 3 months when he discovered forged documents with his signature, attempting to transfer his property into her name. There is also documentation of her current relationship with a man named Gerald Sawyer, with text messages dating back 6 months. He laid out printed text messages on the table. Marcus picked them up, his hands shaking. I could see the messages from where I Saturday. Waiting for the old lady to die, one read. Then it is payday. Read another. The idiot has no idea what is coming. Clarissa, Marcus said, his voice breaking. Who is Gerald Sawyer? Nobody. A friend. This is taken out of context. Clarissa's voice rose higher. Marcus, do not listen to them. They are trying to turn you against me. Sterling was not finished. The investigation also uncovered that Marcus's trust fund, which should contain approximately $500,000, has been systematically drained over the past 3 years. Mrs. Henderson opened 6 credit cards in Marcus's name without his knowledge. The current debt in his name totals $87,000. Marcus's head snapped up. What? Additionally, Sterling continued, she has withdrawn funds from your joint checking account over the past 18 months, totaling $73,000, transferring them to an offshore account registered solely in her name. Marcus turned to Clarissa, his face a mask of betrayal and pain. You told me that money was for taxes. You said we needed to pay quarterly estimates for my consulting business. It was for taxes, Clarissa said, but her voice lacked conviction. I was protecting us, protecting our future. The funds were never sent to the IRS, Sterling said. They went to an account at International Banking Services in the Cayman Islands. The room fell silent, except for Marcus's ragged breathing. He looked at the documents spread before him, then at Clarissa, then at me. Dad, did you know about this? Your mother knew, I said quietly. She wanted you to see for yourself. She did not want to tell you secondhand. She wanted you to have proof. Clarissa's strategy shifted again, desperation creeping into her voice. None of this matters. The estate should be split with Marcus. He is Margaret's son. I will contest the will. Any lawyer would take this case. Undue influence. Margaret was elderly, sick. She was not in her right mind when she made these decisions. Demetrius manipulated her. Sterling's expression hardened. On what grounds would you claim undue influence, Mrs. Henderson? You have no standing in this matter. You are not a blood relative. And the will explicitly names only Mr. Demetrius and Marcus. Furthermore, Mrs. Margaret was evaluated by 3 independent physicians during the creation of her will. All certified her mental competence. Her instructions were clear, detailed, and witnessed by multiple parties. Clarissa turned fully toward me, her mask finally slipping completely. You think you are going to keep all this money? I will tie this up in court for years. I will claim elder abuse. I will go to the media. I know journalists. They would love this story. Wealthy widower hoards money while wife dies poor. I will destroy your reputation. Marcus stood up. Clarissa, stop. Shut up, Marcus, she snapped. I am doing this for us. For our future. Your father is worth millions, and you are just going to walk away? I want a divorce, Marcus said, his voice stronger than I had heard it in years. Clarissa laughed, a harsh sound. You are pathetic. Just like your father. Both of you too stupid to use what you have. Sterling picked up his phone. Send them in, please. The conference room doors opened, and 2 police officers entered, a man and a woman in uniform. Behind them came a woman in a gray suit carrying a badge. Mrs. Henderson. The woman in the suit said, I am Detective Sarah Morrison, with the Financial Crimes Division. We have warrants for your arrest on charges of identity theft, fraud, forgery, and cybercrimes. You need to come with us. Clarissa's face went pale, then red. This is absurd. Marcus, do something. Tell them this is crazy, the detective continued. 3 days ago, someone attempted to access Mr. Demetrius's private banking accounts using forged documents. The attempts were traced to an IP address registered to your home address. Our cyber forensics team has recovered draft documents from your personal laptop, including forged signatures and transfer authorizations. My computer was hacked, Clarissa said quickly. This is a setup. We also have testimony from 3 members of Mr. Demetrius's corporate board, Sterling added. You contacted them last month claiming to represent Mr. Demetrius, stating he was experiencing declining health and needed to transfer control of his assets. You requested confidential financial information under false pretenses. Clarissa looked around the room wildly, seeing her options collapse. Then her expression changed, hardening into something ugly and desperate. Fine. Yes. I tried to access the money. Someone had to. You all want to know the truth? She pointed at me. He neglected Margaret. She died while he was off playing businessman. I was there for her. I took care of her while he was too busy. Dad was at the hospital every single day, Marcus said, his voice shaking. I saw him there. He barely left her side. You do not understand what I have had to deal with, Clarissa shouted. 5 years married to a trust fund baby whose parents dress like homeless people. Do you know the humiliation? Explaining at charity events why my in-laws look like that? I deserved compensation for what I put up with. The detective stepped forward. Mrs. Henderson, you need to come with us now. Marcus. Clarissa turned to him one last time. Think about what you are throwing away. Your father is worth $700 million. The room went still. Even the police officers looked surprised. The conference room felt suddenly smaller, the air thick with shock. Clarissa had said $700 million. The number hung in the air like smoke. How do you know that number? Sterling asked, his voice sharp for the first time. Clarissa realized her mistake too late. Her mouth opened and closed. I guessed. It was obvious from the estate size. The preliminary estate reading did not include Mr. Demetrius's personal holdings, Sterling said coldly. Only Mrs. Margaret's separate assets. You could not have guessed that number unless you had already researched it. Detective Morrison pulled out a tablet and tapped on it. Mrs. Henderson, our investigation revealed that you hired a private investigator 4 months ago, Blackwell Investigations. They provided you with a complete financial profile of Mr. Demetrius. You have known about his wealth for quite some time. Clarissa's face flushed. She looked at Marcus, at me, at the attorneys, searching for any sympathy. She found none. So what if I knew? That changes nothing. The money should be split with Marcus. I will still contest this. You have no legal standing, Sterling repeated. And now you have just confessed to knowingly concealing information while making false claims about the family's financial situation. Clarissa sat down heavily, her carefully constructed world crumbling. This is not over, she said, but the fight had gone out of her voice. Sterling looked at me. Mr. Demetrius, there are some people here who would like to speak with you. The doors opened again, and 6 people entered. They were all dressed in expensive business attire, carrying themselves with the confidence of senior executives. The lead woman, tall with short gray hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward. Mr. Demetrius, she said warmly. I am Patricia Hammond, CEO of Demetrius Holdings. We came as soon as we heard about Mrs. Margaret. Sir, we are so deeply sorry for your loss. A man in his 50s introduced himself next. Andrew Walsh, CFO of Demetrius Capital Management. Our condolences, sir. A younger woman with red hair followed. Helen Brennan, president of the Demetrius Foundation. 3 others introduced themselves, each representing different arms of what was clearly a business empire. Clarissa stared at them, her mind visibly trying to process what was happening. Why do all these companies have his name? Clarissa asked, her voice small. Patricia looked at her with cool assessment. Because he owns them, she turned back to me. Sir, we prepared the briefing materials you requested. Should we present them now? I nodded. Patricia opened her tablet and began speaking, addressing the room. Mr. Demetrius founded his first company, Demetrius Software Solutions, at age 28 in 1992. The company developed enterprise management systems and was acquired by Microsoft in 1997 for $85 million. Mr. Demetrius used those funds to establish a diversified investment portfolio. She pulled up a presentation on the conference room screen. Current holdings include significant equity stakes in 12 major technology companies, including early investments in companies that are now household names. Real estate holdings span 17 states, including 3 hotels, 2 shopping centers, and the Meridian office complex downtown. The venture capital division currently backs 53 startup companies. Additional holdings include Hammond Publishing House, Westfield Manufacturing, and numerous other businesses. Marcus stared at the screen, his mouth open. Dad, I had no idea, Patricia continued. Mr. Demetrius maintains a low public profile. He has declined interviews from Forbes, Fortune, and Bloomberg. He serves on no public boards, makes no public appearances, and conducts all business through trusted executives. His personal net worth is estimated at approximately $740 million. Clarissa made a choking sound. Marcus looked at me with an expression I could not read. Confusion, shock, something like grief. Why did you never tell me? Marcus asked quietly. I met his eyes. Your mother and I wanted you to make your own way. We gave you education, support, but not wealth. We wanted you to build character, not rely on money you did not earn. The trust fund was for emergencies, not comfort. I thought you were. Marcus trailed off. I know what you thought, I said. What Clarissa told you to think. Patricia spoke again. Mr. Demetrius, there is one more matter. Our security team flagged unusual activity 3 days ago. Someone attempted to access your private accounts using forged documents. They had your social security number, banking information, and other personal details. The attempts were traced to Mrs. Henderson's IP address. The attempts began 1 week after Mrs. Margaret's cancer was diagnosed as terminal. Clarissa stood up abruptly. I want a lawyer. I am not saying anything else. That is wise, Detective Morrison said. You are going to need one. She gestured to the uniformed officers, who moved toward Clarissa. Wait, Andrew Walsh said. He looked at me, and I nodded permission. There is more. Mrs. Henderson, you also contacted 3 members of our board of directors over the past month. You claimed to represent Mr. Demetrius, stating he was experiencing declining health and cognitive issues. You requested confidential financial information and asked about procedures for transferring control of assets in case of incapacity. That is fraud, Sterling said. Identity theft. Attempted corporate espionage. The charges are adding up quickly. Mrs. Henderson. Clarissa's face had gone from red to white. She swayed slightly on her feet. Marcus watched her with an expression of complete devastation. The woman he had loved, had married, had built a life with for 5 years, was revealing herself to be someone he had never known at all. Marcus, please, Clarissa said, her voice breaking. I did this for us. I was trying to secure our future. If I had just asked, they never would have helped. Your parents were so selfish with their money. My mother offered to help us 3 times in the past 2 years, Marcus said, his voice hollow. 3 times. She said if we ever needed anything at all, we just had to ask. You told me we should refuse. You said we were too proud to take charity from people who had nothing to give. Clarissa had no response to that. The truth of her manipulation was laid bare. Detective Morrison spoke into her radio. We are ready for transport. She looked at Clarissa. Mrs. Henderson, you are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As she recited the Miranda rights, Clarissa interrupted. Before you arrest me, everyone in this room should know something. Her voice had changed, becoming almost gleeful despite her situation. There is a secret that will change everything. The detective paused. Sterling looked wary. Marcus tensed. Demetrius is not Marcus's biological father, Clarissa announced, her voice triumphant. Margaret had an affair in 1992. She told me everything before she died. She was consumed with guilt, needed to confess to someone. Marcus, your real father is Margaret's high school sweetheart. She never told Demetrius. She lied to him for over 30 years. The room went silent. Marcus turned to look at me, his face stricken. I felt my chest tighten, pain lancing through me sharper than any physical wound. Blood test will prove it, Clarissa continued, pressing her advantage. And that means, Demetrius, you have no legal claim to Marcus, which means the estate planning is compromised. The court will have to reconsider everything. She looked around the room, feeding on the shock. See? Not so powerful now, are you? Your whole life, you raised another man's son. Margaret played you for a fool. Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. Dad, is this true? I sat down slowly, feeling every one of my 67 years. My hands trembled slightly. For the first time since Margaret's death, I felt tears pressing against my eyes. Patricia and the other executives looked uncomfortable, unsure whether to stay or leave. Sterling's expression had hardened to stone. Now, Clarissa said, her voice taking on a businesslike tone, I think we can make a deal. Drop all charges, give me a settlement, and I keep this quiet. Otherwise, this goes public. Imagine the headlines. Billionaire discovers decades of deception. Margaret's reputation destroyed. Marcus learns his whole identity is a lie. Or, you pay me $50 million, and I disappear forever. That is extortion, Sterling said coldly. You just added another felony to your list. Add it, Clarissa said recklessly. But think about what is at stake. Demetrius's reputation, Marcus's identity, Margaret's memory, all of it destroyed. Or you pay, and this nightmare ends. I looked up at Marcus. His face was wet with tears, his expression broken. I stood slowly and crossed to him. I changed your diapers. I walked you to your first day of school, holding your hand the whole way because you were so nervous. I taught you to ride a bike in the park, running beside you until you found your balance. I sat in the stands at every baseball game, every school play, every parent-teacher conference. I sat with you in the hospital when your mother was dying, and we held her hands together. My voice was steady despite the tears on my face. Biology does not make a father. Love does. Time does. Presence does. So threaten whatever you want. I know who my son is. Marcus broke down, crossing the distance between us and hugging me tightly. I do not care about any test, he said through his tears. I do not care what she says. You are my dad. You are my father. Sterling picked up his phone. Dr. Patterson, could you please come in now? An elderly woman in her 70s entered the conference room. She wore professional attire and carried a medical bag. I am Dr. Eleanor Patterson, she said. I was Mrs. Margaret's oncologist for the past 18 months. She looked at Clarissa with cold disdain. I heard what you just claimed about Mrs. Margaret's supposed confession. I need to clarify something. Mrs. Margaret was on heavy morphine for her final 3 weeks of life. She was rarely conscious during that time. When she was awake, she was often confused about where she was and what year it was. She was certainly not having coherent, detailed conversations with visitors about decades-old affairs. Dr. Patterson pulled out a folder. Furthermore, hospital visitor logs show that Mrs. Henderson was only allowed 2 visits during the final month. Both visits were supervised by nursing staff. Security footage shows she spent both visits on her cell phone. She did not speak to Mrs. Margaret at all during either visit. Clarissa's face flushed. She told me before she got sick. Months ago. Sterling opened a leather-bound journal. Margaret kept journals. Every year for 43 years. The family has allowed me to share relevant entries. He began reading. 25th wedding anniversary. Demetrius is reading Marcus a bedtime story. They have the same laugh, the same stubborn way of trying to figure things out. I see so much of his father in him. Sometimes I watch them together, and my heart could burst with love for both of them. He flipped to another page. Marcus is 8 today. Demetrius bought him a microscope. The two of them spent 3 hours looking at pond water. Marcus has his father's curiosity, his father's patience, his father's gentle way with questions. Sterling looked up. Entry after entry, spanning decades, documenting the similarities between father and son, documenting their bond. There was no affair. Your story was a desperate fabrication designed to extort money. Clarissa opened her mouth, then closed it. She had nothing left. Mrs. Henderson, Detective Morrison said firmly, you are under arrest. The uniformed officers moved forward, taking her arms. They cuffed her hands behind her back. This is not over, Clarissa screamed as they led her toward the door. I will tell everyone everything. I will make sure every newspaper knows what kind of people you are. Marcus, you are throwing away millions. Millions. Her voice echoed down the hallway as they took her to the elevator. The room fell silent after she was gone. Marcus and I stood together, his arm still around my shoulders. Patricia cleared her throat gently. Sir, we will give you some privacy. Please call if you need anything. The executives filed out quietly, followed by Sterling and his associates. Only Marcus and I remained in the conference room, the city spread out below us through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I am so sorry, Marcus said. I should have seen what she was. Mom tried to tell me. She tried so many times. You loved her, I said. We do not see clearly when we love. That is not weakness. That is being human. Why did you and Mom live so quietly if you had so much money? I led him to the window, looking out at the city. We had enough. Everything beyond that felt like excess. Your mother grew up wealthy. She saw how it corrupted people, how it isolated them, how it made them suspicious of everyone's motives. We wanted to raise you with values, not luxury. We wanted you to know yourself, to build your own character, to understand that a person's worth has nothing to do with their bank balance. Marcus nodded slowly, processing. I failed that test, did not I? I married Clarissa. I believed her when she said you two were embarrassing, that you had no ambition. You did not fail anything, I said. You are 29 years old. You are learning. That is what life is for. 3 days later, my phone would not stop buzzing. Marcus sat across from me in Margaret's sitting room, his own phone in his hand, his face pale. We had been going through her belongings together, packing things carefully, deciding what to keep and what to donate. Now, everything had changed again. Dad, have you seen this? Marcus held up his phone, showing me a news website. The headline read, Billionaire hid wealth, from dying wife, cruel son, abandons grieving widow. I took the phone and read the article. Clarissa had been released on bail, posted by someone named Gerald Sawyer. She had gone immediately to the media with her version of events. The article painted her as a victim, me as a miser, who kept Margaret in poverty while hoarding millions, and Marcus as a heartless son who abandoned his wife in her time of need. She is claiming she tried to access the accounts to pay for Mom's medical bills, Marcus said, his voice tight. Bills you supposedly refused to cover. There are photos of Mom's old car, pictures of you two at charity events wearing simple clothes. My phone rang. Patricia Hammond. Sir, I am so sorry to disturb you, but we are getting calls from investors and board members. This story is spreading quickly. Our stock prices are being affected. I looked out the window at the garden Margaret had planted, now showing the first signs of spring growth. Thank you for letting me know, Patricia. We will handle it. Some of the board members are suggesting a settlement, sir. To make this go away quickly, I will call you back, I said, and ended the call. Marcus scrolled through his phone. It is everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, news sites. There is a hashtag, Justice for Clarissa. People are organizing protests. Dad, there are people outside the house right now. I walked to the front window. Sure enough, about 20 people stood on the sidewalk holding signs. News vans lined the street. A reporter was doing a stand-up in front of the house, gesturing dramatically toward the 8,000-square-foot estate. Marcus joined me at the window. This is insane. How can people believe her? Because the story she tells makes sense to them, I said. Rich man hoards money, poor woman suffers. It fits their worldview. The truth is more complicated, and complicated stories do not spread as easily. Over the next 2 days, the situation escalated. Marcus received hate messages on social media, hundreds of them, strangers calling him a gold digger, accusing him of abandoning his wife for money. He had to take a leave of absence from his consulting job because clients were uncomfortable with the controversy. 3 charities that had received donations from the Demetrius Foundation returned the money, stating they could not be associated with the negative publicity. Board members called daily, urging settlement. Even Sterling suggested we consider it. Trials take months, Sterling said during a conference call. The criminal case against Mrs. Henderson won't start for at least 6 months, maybe longer. Meanwhile, she and her lawyer are poisoning the jury pool and destroying your reputation daily. Her attorney is skilled. He is filing motions to dismiss, claiming overzealous prosecution of a grieving widow. Clarissa's lawyer had also filed a civil suit against me for intentional infliction of emotional distress, demanding $200 million in damages. The lawsuit claimed I had deliberately hidden my wealth to manipulate Marcus, that I had caused Clarissa psychological trauma by framing her for crimes she did not commit. A man named Gerald Sawyer had surfaced, giving interviews as Clarissa's financial advisor. He hinted at more revelations coming, suggesting there were dark secrets in Margaret's past that would shock everyone. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. Dad, maybe we should just pay her something. Make this stop. It is destroying both of us. Mom would not want this. I was tempted. I stood at the sink, looking out at Margaret's garden, feeling exhausted, grieving, under siege, watching my son suffer. Maybe they were right. Maybe the cost of fighting exceeded the value of victory. My phone buzzed again. Another board member suggesting settlement. $75 million, All charges dropped. Non-disclosure agreement. Just make it go away, the text read. Cut your losses. I was about to respond when Marcus said, Dad, there is something here. He was standing in Margaret's study, holding a book he had pulled from the shelf. Behind it was a wall safe, small and hidden. The books were too neat here, like someone had arranged them carefully to hide something. And look, there is a keypad. I crossed to him. The safe was about 12 inches square, the kind used for important documents. Try my birthday, I said. Marcus entered the date. The safe clicked open. Inside was a USB drive and a letter in an envelope with Margaret's handwriting. The envelope read, "To be opened when needed most." We sat together on the floor of her study, Marcus's laptop between us. He plugged in the USB drive. It contained a single video file dated 3 months before Margaret's death. Marcus clicked play. Margaret appeared on the screen, sitting in this same study. She looked thin, her scarf covering her hair loss from chemotherapy, but her eyes were bright and focused. She smiled at the camera. "Hello, my darlings," she said. "Demetrius, my love, if you are watching this, then Clarissa has made her move. I knew she would. I have known for 2 years what she is, what she plans, what she is capable of." Marcus made a sound, something between a sob and a gasp. Margaret continued, "I am sorry I did not tell you everything, but I needed Marcus to see for himself. I needed him to understand without his mother's interference. On this drive is everything you need to fight back. Everything." The video ended, and a folder opened automatically. Inside were hundreds of files, screenshots, audio recordings, documents, videos. Marcus and I began going through them, and with each file, the scope of Clarissa's deception became clearer. Text messages between Clarissa and Gerald Sawyer, going back 18 months. "The old bat has 6 months tops," one read. "Then it's payday." Another, "Demetrius is completely clueless. Thinks I love his pathetic son." Audio recordings that Margaret had made, using a voice-activated recorder hidden in her bedroom. Clarissa on the phone with Gerald. "I have convinced Marcus his parents are poor. He has no idea what is coming. The moment Margaret dies, we move on the assets." Video footage from a hidden camera in Margaret's home office, showing Clarissa going through files when she thought no one was home, photographing documents with her phone. A complete timeline proving Clarissa had known about the wealth for over a year. She had hired her own private investigator, Blackwell Investigations, who had provided her with a full financial profile of me 9 months before Margaret died. Bank records showing payments to Blackwell totaling $37,000. But the most damning evidence was yet to come. Margaret had somehow obtained records of Clarissa's past, her real past. Her birth name was Christine Marie Barlow. She had outstanding warrants in Oregon and Nevada for fraud. She and Gerald Sawyer had run this exact scheme before, targeting wealthy families when a death was imminent. In California, they had approached the Thornton family after the mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Clarissa, then using the name Claire Bennett, had seduced the son. They extracted a settlement of $800,000 before moving on. In Arizona, they had targeted the Palmer family, getting $2.3 million before being exposed. But the Palmers had been too ashamed to press charges publicly. Margaret had found 5 other cases, each following the same pattern. Clarissa and Gerald would identify a wealthy family with an aging, ill parent. Clarissa would seduce a son or heir. They would position themselves as victims, extract settlements, then disappear. The final file was a video compilation showing Clarissa and Gerald meeting in hotel rooms, restaurants, his apartment. They were clearly partners, clearly intimate. The dates spanned from before her marriage to Marcus, all the way to 2 weeks before Margaret's death. "She was with him the whole time," Marcus whispered. "Our entire marriage. I was just a mark." The video ended with Margaret looking directly at the camera. "I gathered this evidence because I knew she would go after you after I am gone. But I also knew you would be tempted to settle, to make peace, to avoid the fight." She leaned forward, her expression intense. "Do not, my darling. Do not let her win. This is not about the money. I do not care about the money. But this is about Marcus. He needs to see justice done. He needs to know that truth matters, that character matters, that fighting for what is right is worth the cost. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Show him strength, Demetrius. Show him dignity. Show him how to fight even when fighting is hard. I love you both. This is my last gift to you. The truth and the tools to defend it. She blew a kiss at the camera, and the video ended. Marcus and I sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he spoke. She knew everything. She was protecting us until the very end. Even when she was dying, she was still taking care of us. Your mother was always 3 steps ahead of everyone, I said, my voice thick. What do we do now? I stood, feeling strength returning to my bones. We fight. We show the world exactly who Clarissa is. We honor your mother's last request. I called Sterling. Douglas, I need you to arrange a press conference for tomorrow morning. Major hotel, large conference room. I am going public with everything. Sir, are you certain? Completely certain. And contact the FBI. They need to see this evidence. This is not just about us. This is about every family Clarissa and Gerald have destroyed. Marcus stood beside me. I want to be there. At the press conference. I want to speak too. I looked at my son, seeing the man he was becoming. Your mother would be proud of you. I hope so, he said. I have a lot to make up for. No, I said firmly. You have nothing to make up for. You loved someone who did not deserve it. That is not a sin. That is a testament to your capacity for love. We spent the rest of the evening preparing, organizing the evidence, working with Sterling and Patricia to coordinate the press conference. Tomorrow, we would tell our story. Tomorrow, we would fight back. The Grandview Hotel's grand ballroom could hold 300 people. By 9:30 the next morning, it was packed. Cameras lined the back wall. Reporters filled every seat, with more standing along the sides. The major networks were there, along with print journalists, bloggers, and live streamers. I stood backstage with Marcus, Sterling, and Patricia. My hands were steady. Marcus looked nervous, but determined. You do not have to do this, I told him quietly. I can handle the press conference alone. No, Marcus said. I need to be there. I need people to hear from me. At 10 o'clock, we walked onto the small stage. The camera flashes were immediate and blinding. Questions were shouted from every direction. Sterling raised his hands for quiet, and gradually, the room settled. I stepped to the podium. Thank you for coming. My name is Demetrius, and I have a statement to read. I began with Margaret, describing our 43-year marriage, our values, our choices. I explained why we lived simply despite our means, our belief that character mattered more than displays of wealth. The room was silent, everyone listening. Then I said, I am here to address false allegations made by Christine Marie Barlow, who some of you know as Clarissa Henderson. A murmur rippled through the crowd at the name discrepancy. Patricia operated the presentation screen behind me. Images appeared. Clarissa's real identity documents, her past convictions under various names, the outstanding warrants. Then the text messages between her and Gerald Sawyer, planning their scheme. The audio recordings of her disparaging Margaret, Marcus, and me while plotting to take the money. The timeline showing she had known about the wealth all along, that her entire persona as a struggling daughter-in-law was fabricated. Photos of her meeting with Gerald throughout her marriage to Marcus, proving their ongoing partnership. Reporters furiously typed on laptops and phones. The live stream comment sections, visible on tablets held by their operators, were exploding. My wife Margaret compiled this evidence, I said, because she understood something I was slow to grasp. Some people view kindness as weakness. They see privacy as vulnerability. We lived simply not because we lacked means, but because we valued something more precious than display. We valued peace. We valued family. We valued substance over show. I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. Mrs. Barlow mistook that peace for ignorance. That was her mistake. I opened the floor to questions. Hands shot up everywhere. Mr. Demetrius, why not just settle? You clearly have the resources to make this go away. I thought about how to answer. Because my son was watching. I needed to show him that truth is worth fighting for. That we do not surrender to lies, simply because fighting is uncomfortable. Margaret wanted Marcus to see that character matters more than convenience. Another reporter. What about the claims that you kept your wife in poverty? Patricia displayed images on the screen. Photographs of Margaret's actual home, the 8,000 square foot estate, her vacation property, receipts from the many vacations we had taken together, bank statements showing the accounts in her name with millions of dollars, records of her charitable donations totaling hundreds of thousands annually. My wife controlled her own wealth, I said. She chose how to live. We both did. The idea that I controlled or limited her is fiction. Mr. Marcus, a reporter called out, why are you supporting your father over your wife? Marcus stepped to the microphone. His voice shook at first, but grew stronger. Because Clarissa lied to me for 5 years. She was not my wife. She was someone playing the role of my wife. Everything I have seen, every piece of evidence, every recording, proves that she never loved me. I was a target, a mark, a means to money. He paused, collecting himself. My father gave me a good life. He and my mother taught me values, education, how to work for what I want. Clarissa taught me that some people see kindness as weakness and love as a tool for manipulation. I choose my father. I choose the truth. The room erupted with more questions, but Sterling stepped forward. We have provided copies of all evidence to federal investigators. This is now a multi-state criminal investigation involving fraud, identity theft, and racketeering. Thank you for your time. As we left the stage, I could hear the reporters already calling their editors, updating their stories in real time. The narrative was shifting. By that afternoon, the hashtag had changed from Justice for Clarissa to Clarissa Exposed. Think pieces were being written about con artists who target grieving families. The protesters outside my house had disappeared, replaced by journalists wanting interviews. Clarissa's lawyer held a competing press conference across town that afternoon. We watched it on television. Clarissa sat at a table, her lawyer beside her, looking defiant but rattled. This so-called evidence is fabricated, her lawyer claimed. Mr. Demetrius has unlimited resources. He can create any narrative he wants. But reporters pressed him with specific questions based on our revelations. What about the outstanding warrants in Oregon and Nevada under the name Christine Barlow? One asked. Are those fabricated too? My client has never been convicted of any crime, the lawyer said, avoiding the question. What about the 5 previous families? The Thorntons in California? The Palmers in Arizona? They have come forward and identified your client from photographs. Are they all lying? Clarissa leaned into the microphone. Those families were not targeted. We had legitimate relationships that ended badly. They are trying to destroy me because I am fighting for what is rightfully mine. A reporter asked, if you were in a legitimate relationship with the Thornton son, why did you leave immediately after receiving an $800,000 settlement? Why did you change your name afterward? Clarissa's composure cracked. I was young. I made mistakes. But that has nothing to do with Marcus. I love Marcus. This is about a father trying to control his son's life. Is Gerald Sawyer your partner? Another reporter asked bluntly. He is my financial advisor. Is he also your romantic partner? There are photographs of you two together in intimate situations spanning the past 18 months. Clarissa stood up abruptly. This press conference is over. Her lawyer tried to manage the situation, but she was already leaving, cameras following her out. The legal system moved quickly after that. Within 2 days, there was an emergency court hearing. The prosecutor presented Margaret's evidence, now supplemented by FBI findings. They had connected Clarissa to 7 separate cons across 4 states. Gerald Sawyer had been arrested attempting to flee to Mexico. At the hearing, his lawyer announced he was willing to cooperate with authorities in exchange for immunity. Sterling and I sat in the courtroom as Gerald testified. He explained the entire operation, how he and Clarissa had run this con for 12 years, how they identified targets through obituaries and hospital records, how Clarissa would seduce the heir, while Gerald posed as various professionals, how they extracted settlements and moved on. Why did you come forward? The prosecutor asked. Because she got reckless, Gerald said. She was supposed to play the long game with the Demetrius family, but she couldn't wait. She started trying to access accounts while Mrs. Margaret was still alive. I told her to wait, but she wouldn't listen. When it all fell apart, I knew she would blame me. I wanted out. He provided documentation, bank accounts where they had hidden money, names of other victims across multiple states, evidence of their coordination. 3 other families had come forward after seeing the press conference, recognizing Clarissa from the photos. They had been too ashamed to report what happened to them. One elderly man had lost his life savings. Another family had been torn apart. The judge reviewed all the evidence. When Clarissa's lawyer tried to argue for bail reduction, calling her a low flight risk, the prosecutor presented evidence of 3 passports in different names found in a storage unit Gerald had rented. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, "the defendant has a 12-year history of fraud under multiple aliases. She has the means, motive, and demonstrated history of fleeing jurisdiction. She poses an extreme flight risk." The judge denied bail. The defendant will remain in custody until trial. Given the extensive evidence of interstate fraud, this case will be transferred to federal jurisdiction. Clarissa exploded as they led her away. "This is not fair. Marcus, tell them. Tell them I love you." Marcus, sitting beside me in the gallery, remained silent. He watched her being led out, his expression sad, but resolute. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Sterling made a brief statement. "Justice is being served. We are grateful to the prosecutors and investigators who worked quickly to uncover the full extent of Mrs. Barlow's criminal enterprise. Our thoughts are with all the families she has harmed," a reporter called out. "Mr. Marcus, do you have any feelings for your wife now?" Marcus stopped, thought for a moment. "I have feelings for the person I thought she was, but that person never existed. I'm grieving someone who was never real." In the car driving home, Marcus was quiet. "Finally," he said, "how do I trust anyone again, Dad? How do I know if someone loves me, or loves what they think I have?" "You start by trusting yourself," I said. "You learn the red flags, the warning signs. You take your time. And you remember that what happened to you was not your fault. Clarissa is very good at what she does. That is why she has gotten away with it for so long." "Have you heard from Sarah Beth?" I asked. Sarah Beth Collins was the woman who had called after the first press conference, daughter of one of Clarissa's earlier victims. "Yeah," Marcus said. "We are meeting for coffee tomorrow. She understands what this feels like." Over the following weeks, the legal process continued. Gerald's cooperation provided prosecutors with everything they needed. Clarissa's public defender tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the evidence was so overwhelming that prosecutors saw no reason to negotiate. The civil suit Clarissa had filed against me was dismissed by the judge as frivolous. She was ordered to pay court costs and my legal fees. Other victims continued to come forward, emboldened by seeing justice being served. The FBI expanded their investigation, finding evidence of fraud going back even further than 12 years. Clarissa and Gerald had destroyed dozens of families. Marcus began seeing a therapist, working through the betrayal and manipulation. He started a support group for other victims of romance fraud, meeting weekly at a community center. Sarah Beth co-founded it with him. They helped others process the shame and self-blame that came with being conned by someone they loved. One evening, 6 weeks after Margaret's funeral, Marcus and I visited her grave together. He placed fresh flowers, white roses, like the ones that had covered her casket. "Mom knew all along," Marcus said quietly. "She was protecting me, even when she was dying. That was her gift," I said. "She saw threats coming and prepared us. She gave us the truth and the tools to defend it." "I miss her," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "I miss her every single day," I replied. "But she is still here, in the choices we make, in the values we uphold. She is here in your decision to fight for truth, instead of accepting lies." We stood there in silence as the sun set, 2 men learning to live without the woman who had held them together. 4 months after Margaret's death, the federal courthouse was packed for Clarissa's sentencing hearing. Marcus and I sat in the front row of the gallery with Sterling. Sarah Beth sat beside Marcus, offering quiet support. The other victims filled the rows behind us, men and women whose lives Clarissa and Gerald had damaged. Clarissa was led in wearing a prison jumpsuit, her hair limp and unwashed, her face bare of makeup. She looked older somehow, diminished. The glamorous woman who had sneered at me in the funeral home parking lot was gone. In her place sat someone defeated, hollowed out. The judge entered, and we all stood. Judge Catherine Morrison was known for tough sentencing in fraud cases. She had reviewed every piece of evidence, heard testimony from multiple victims, studied the pattern of devastation Clarissa had left across 4 states and 12 years. Miss Barlow, the judge began, I have presided over many fraud cases in my 30 years on the bench, but the calculated cruelty of your crimes stands out. You did not just steal money, you infiltrated families during their most vulnerable moments. You exploited grief, trust, and love. You left behind broken people who questioned their own judgment, their ability to trust, their fundamental belief in human goodness. Clarissa stared at the table, showing no emotion. The judge continued, the jury found you guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, identity theft, interstate fraud, extortion, racketeering. The federal sentencing guidelines recommend 12 to 15 years. However, given the scope of your crimes, the number of victims, and your complete lack of remorse, I am sentencing you to 20 years in federal prison. A gasp went through the courtroom. Clarissa's head snapped up, her eyes wide. Additionally, you will serve consecutive sentences in Oregon and Nevada for the outstanding warrants there, totaling another 12 years. You will be 73 years old before you are eligible for parole. You are also ordered to pay restitution to all identified victims, totaling $8.7 million, though I understand you have no assets to satisfy this debt. The judge looked at Clarissa directly. Do you have anything to say? Clarissa stood slowly. For a moment, I thought she might apologize, might show some recognition of the harm she had caused. Instead, her voice was flat. I have nothing to say. Then this court is adjourned, Judge Morrison said, bringing down her gavel. As they led Clarissa away, she did not look at Marcus, did not look at me, did not look at any of the victims she had destroyed. She simply walked out, shoulders slumped, heading to 32 years in prison. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Marcus leaned against the wall, processing. It is over, he said. It is actually over. The legal part is, I said. The healing part will take longer. Sarah Beth touched his shoulder. But you are not alone in it. None of us are. A victim I recognized from the earlier hearings, an elderly man named Howard Patterson, approached us. I wanted to thank you, he said to Marcus, for fighting, for not settling, for making sure she faced consequences. My children stopped speaking to me after I lost their inheritance to Clarissa. They said I was a fool. Because of your foundation's family counseling program, we are rebuilding our relationship. You gave me hope. Another woman, Diane Morris, whose daughter had been targeted by Gerald, joined us. My daughter Emily tried to end her life after losing everything. Your son visited her in the hospital, Marcus. He shared his story. Knowing she was not alone, that she was not stupid or weak, it saved her. She is doing better now. She is going back to school. More victims gathered around, sharing stories of healing, of second chances, of finding their way back to trust. The support group Marcus and Sarah Beth had expanded to 3 cities, helping dozens of people. Sterling pulled me aside. Sir, the FBI wants to meet with you. They are using Mrs. Margaret's investigative methods as a model for training agents in financial fraud detection. They want your permission to incorporate her techniques into their curriculum. Of course, I said. Margaret would want her work to help others. Patricia texted me. The Demetrius Foundation's fraud prevention program had received major grants from 2 other foundations impressed by our work. We would be able to expand nationwide, providing education and support to potential victims before they lost everything. As we left the courthouse, reporters were waiting, but their tone had changed. They asked respectful questions about the Foundation's work, about Marcus's recovery, about how we planned to help other families avoid what we had experienced. Marcus spoke eloquently. My mother saw a threat to our family and prepared us to fight it. Now we are using what she taught us to protect other families. That is her legacy. Not the money she left behind, but the example she set. Fight for truth. Stand for what is right. Protect the vulnerable. That evening, Marcus and I sat on the terrace of my home, the estate Margaret had maintained with such care. The garden was in full bloom, her roses spectacular in the fading light. "I have been thinking about what to do next," Marcus said. "I cannot go back to consulting. It feels meaningless after everything." "What do you want to do?" "I want to work for the foundation full-time. Director of Victim Services. I want to help people like me, like Sarah Beth, like all those people in the courthouse today. I want to turn what happened to me into something that helps others." I smiled. "Your mother would be proud." "I am proud." "I met someone," Marcus said carefully. "Anna. She is a social worker we partnered with for the support groups. She knows my whole story, every embarrassing detail, and she still wants to have coffee with me." "Take it slow," I advised. "There is no rush." That is what Sarah Beth said, and what Anna said, actually. She is patient. She understands I need time. We sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear. My phone buzzed. A message from one of the prosecutors. Gerald Sawyer had been sentenced to 12 years with his cooperation deal. He would serve his time, then be deported to Canada, where he was originally from. "It really is over," Marcus said again, as if testing the words. "No," I corrected gently. "It is just beginning. The legal battle is over. Now comes the real work. Building a life, learning to trust again, helping others. That is the work that matters." Marcus nodded. I saw Clarissa's face when they sentenced her. She looked empty, like there was nothing inside her at all. "Maybe there never was," I said. "Margaret used to say that people who spend their lives pretending eventually forget who they really are. Clarissa played so many roles for so many people that she lost herself somewhere along the way." "Do you feel sorry for her?" I considered the question. "I feel sorry that she wasted her life on schemes and cons when she could have built something real. But I do not forgive what she did to you, to Margaret's memory, to all those other families. Some actions put you beyond forgiveness." "Good," Marcus said, "because I do not forgive her either. Maybe someday, but not today." We went inside eventually, making dinner together in Margaret's kitchen. As we cooked, Marcus told me about Anna, about the foundation's expansion plans, about a podcast someone wanted him to do about romance fraud awareness. "Life is moving forward," he said. "I did not think it would, but it is." "That is what Margaret wanted," I said. "Not for us to be stuck in grief or anger, but to take what happened and build something good from it, to turn pain into purpose." Later, alone in my study, I looked at the photo of Margaret I kept on my desk. "We did it," I told her. "We protected him. He is going to be okay. Better than okay. He is going to be strong." I opened my journal and wrote, "Margaret was right about everything, including how this would end. She orchestrated justice from beyond the grave and gave us the tools to heal. Clarissa is in prison now, but she was imprisoned long before that, by her own emptiness, her inability to see beyond surfaces. Marcus and I are free, not because we won, but because we never let the fight change who we are." The first anniversary of Margaret's death arrived with surprising gentleness. Marcus and I stood at her grave in the morning, the grass green beneath our feet, the sky clear and blue above. I placed white roses on her headstone, the same flowers that had covered her casket a year ago. "A whole year," Marcus said quietly. "It feels like yesterday, and forever, at the same time." "She would be proud of you," I said. "Of the man you have become, of the work you are doing, of how you have turned tragedy into purpose." Marcus smiled. "I brought someone I want her to meet." He gestured, and Anna walked over from where she had been waiting respectfully by a nearby tree. She carried a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Hi, Mrs. Demetrius," Anna said softly, placing the flowers beside mine. "I wish I could have known you. Marcus tells me you were extraordinary. Thank you for raising such a good man." I looked at them standing together, Marcus's hand finding Anna's naturally, comfortably. There was no pretense between them, no performance. Just two people who had been honest from the start, who built their relationship on truth rather than illusion. That evening, the Demetrius Foundation held its annual gala at the Grandview Hotel, the same venue where we had held the press conference a year earlier. 300 people filled the ballroom, but this time they were here to celebrate, not to witness conflict. Patricia took the stage. Tonight, we celebrate the Margaret Demetrius Memorial Fund's first year. Thanks to donations and Mr. Demetrius's support, we have achieved remarkable things. We have helped prosecute 43 cases of elder abuse and romance fraud. We have recovered over $12 million for victims. Most importantly, we have prevented countless others through our education programs in schools, senior centers, and community organizations. She showed a video featuring testimonials from people the foundation had helped. Howard Patterson, reconciled with his children, Diane Morris's daughter Emily, back in college, thriving. A dozen other faces. People who had been given second chances, who had learned to trust again, who had rebuilt their lives. Marcus took the stage next, now the Foundation's Director of Victim Services. My mother believed that wealth meant responsibility, he said. Not just to live well, but to help others live better. She saw a threat to our family, and she prepared us. Now we use that preparation to help others. The audience gave him a standing ovation. I watched from my seat, seeing how much he had grown, how much strength he had found in his pain. After the speeches, I found myself in a quiet corner with Sarah Beth, Howard, Diane, and 3 other victims who had become friends through the support groups. We want to toast Margaret, Sarah Beth said, raising her glass. The woman who saw what others missed, who fought even when she was dying, who gave us all the gift of justice. We clinked glasses. To Margaret, we said in unison. My father told me about her before he died, Sarah Beth continued. He said she tried to warn him about Clarissa, tried to help him. He made me promise that if her family ever needed anything, I should help. I am glad I could keep that promise. You have done more than that, I said. You have helped Marcus heal. You have co-founded a movement that is changing lives. Later, Marcus and I stood on the hotel's terrace, looking out at the city lights. Anna had gone to get drinks, giving us a moment alone. This feels right, Marcus said. All of it. The foundation, helping people, even Anna. For the first time in years, I feel like I am living my own life, not performing for someone else. That is what freedom looks like, I said. Not wealth, not power, just being authentically yourself. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. That day at the funeral, when Clarissa called you trash, when everyone laughed, why did you not defend yourself? You could have told them who you were, shut her down immediately. I thought about my answer carefully, because I had nothing to prove. I knew who I was. Margaret knew. The people who mattered knew. Clarissa's opinion could not change reality. I learned a long time ago that dignity does not require an audience. Real power knows when to speak and when to simply stand firm. I am trying to get there, Marcus said. To that kind of security. You are closer than you think. You faced your humiliation publicly. You admitted you were fooled. You turned that vulnerability into strength by helping others. That takes more courage than I ever had to show. Anna returned with drinks, and we toasted to Margaret, to healing, to new beginnings. A month later, I sat in Margaret's study, writing in my journal. The room still smelled faintly of her perfume, though that might have been my imagination. Her books lined the shelves. Her notes and journals filled the drawers. I had kept everything, exactly as she left it. I wrote, looking back, I see everything differently now. That terrible day at Margaret's funeral, when Clarissa called me trash, she revealed more about herself than about me. Her words could not diminish me because I knew who I was. I knew who Margaret was. I knew what we had built together over 43 years. Real wealth, I have learned, is not counted in bank accounts. It is measured in the strength of your character when tested, in the relationships you nurture, in the values you defend when defending them costs you something. Clarissa spent years planning to take everything from us, never realizing we had already given what mattered most to Marcus. Integrity, resilience, the understanding that how you stand is more important than where you stand. She is in prison now, but she was imprisoned long before that. Imprisoned by her own greed, her own emptiness, her own inability to see beyond surfaces. Meanwhile, Marcus and I are free, truly free. Not because we won, but because we never let the fight change who we are. That is Margaret's final gift to us. And that is something worth more than any amount of money. 6 months later, at a foundation fundraiser, Marcus introduced Anna to the audience as his fiancée. They had taken it slowly, built trust carefully, made sure their foundation was solid. The applause was genuine and warm. Patricia whispered to me, "Mrs. Margaret would have loved her." "She would," I agreed. Margaret always said Marcus needed someone who saw him clearly, who loved him for himself, not for what he had or who his family was. Anna sees him. The foundation continued to grow. We opened offices in 5 states. The support groups expanded to 12 cities. Prosecutors called us for consultation on fraud cases. Schools invited us to teach prevention programs. Lives were being saved. Families were being protected. Marcus thrived in his new role. He spoke at conferences, trained counselors, met with victims one-on-one. He had found his calling in the wreckage of his pain. One evening, I found him in my study, holding one of Margaret's journals. "Listen to this," he said, reading aloud. "Marcus turns 5 today. Demetrius spent 3 hours building him a treehouse. They worked together, Marcus handing him nails and asking 1,000 questions. I watched them and thought, this is wealth. This moment. This connection. This love. Not the money in the bank. Not the properties or investments. Just this." Marcus closed the journal, his eyes wet. "She knew what mattered. She always knew." "She did," I said. "And now you know it too. That is her real legacy. Not the foundation, not the money we are using to help people. It is the understanding that character and love and truth matter more than anything else. You learned that lesson. You are teaching it to others. That is what she wanted." A year and a half after Clarissa's sentencing, Marcus and Anna married in a small ceremony in my garden, surrounded by the roses Margaret had planted. Sarah Beth was the maid of honor. I walked Marcus down the aisle since Margaret could not, though I felt her presence in every bloom, every breeze, every moment of joy, as I watched them exchange vows, promising honesty, transparency, patience, and understanding. I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The pain, the betrayal, the fight, the victory, and I understood what Margaret had been trying to teach us all along. Life will test you. People will try to take advantage of your kindness. Wolves will dress in sheep's clothing. But if you know who you are, if you stand firm in your values, if you fight for truth even when lying would be easier, then nothing can truly defeat you. The suit Clarissa had mocked hangs framed in Marcus's office now, a reminder of that lesson. It looks like expensive fabric to those who cannot see deeper. To us, it represents something else entirely. The understanding that dignity does not announce itself. That real strength is quiet. That you do not need to prove yourself to people who have already made up their minds. I gave a toast at the reception. "To Margaret," I said, raising my glass, "who taught us that how we stand matters more than where we stand. Who showed us that protecting the people we love is worth any cost. Who gave us truth when lies would have been easier. And to Marcus and Anna, who are building their life on that same foundation of honesty and love." Everyone drank, and I saw tears on many faces. Not tears of sadness, but of joy, of recognition, of understanding. After the wedding, after the guests had left, I sat alone in Margaret's garden as the sun set. "We did it," I told her. "He is happy. He is whole. He understands what matters. You can rest now." The roses swayed in the breeze, and for a moment, I could have sworn I heard her laugh, the sound I had loved for 43 years. I thought about Clarissa sometimes, wondered if she understood yet what she had lost. Not the money she had schemed to get, but the chance to be loved genuinely, to build something real, to be someone of substance rather than just surface. She had spent 12 years conning people, and in the end, she had conned herself most of all. But that was her story to live with. Ours was different. Ours was about standing firm when tested, about loving despite betrayal, about turning pain into purpose. That was the story Margaret had written for us, and we were living it every day. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever stood firm for something that mattered, even when it would have been easier to walk away? Have you ever had to fight for truth when everyone around you suggested compromise? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that character matters more than comfort, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about resilience, truth, and the strength it takes to stand firm when the world is pushing you to bend. And please share this with someone who needs to hear that dignity does not require an audience, that real power is quiet, and that knowing who you are is worth more than any fortune. Thank you for listening to my story. May you always know your own worth. May you stand firm in your truth, and may you have the courage to fight for what matters, no matter the cost. Take care of yourselves, and remember, how you stand matters more than where you stand.